the by saying we, you just meant. I still don't understand what
I was referring to, when I said we, I was referring to the Internal Revenue Service, Department of Justice, all the courts, the ones who are actually making the big bucks off of criminal activity of the IRS. Because I'm sure the payoffs are huge. Bribery is huge. When you stop and think about RICO 1951, 1961, ladies and gentlemen, that is organized crime. And the IRS are home based out of Puerto Rico, so they're not even a U.S.-based organization. So we have to understand that since Congress cannot provide the legislative acts of Congress, nor the Office of Management Budget can provide a lawful number for the IRS, all government agencies are recognized by the Office of Budget and Management, and all their forms are approved by the Office of Budget and Management, and they have the official number of the Office of Budget and Management on their paperwork. There are no approved documents as a U.S. Department of Treasury or any other thing from the Office of Budget and Management on the tax forms. So let's understand fraud, people. Now, let's get back to this letter to Mr. Voinovich, number 7.
Well, Dave,
I had read.
I just want to real quickly say that we write a Treasury note, the Federal Reserve prints up money, and then X amount of years later, we give them more money than they gave us for printing us that money?
No, actually what happens is Congress puts in a request for the Federal Reserve to print money for the U.S. government. Okay, they charge us, depending on if it's a $5 or a $1 or $5, 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever it is, they charge us for the printing materials, the ink, the paper. Then they charge us interest to borrow the money that they have just counterfeited. Because it's counterfeit money, people, is backed by nothing, and that's exactly what a Federal Reserve note is. A Federal Reserve note is a promise to pay at a later date.
It just says Federal Reserve note on the top of the bill rather than
silver certificate or gold certificate.
Right, and I'm going to put one on the screen. You can see that's a Federal Reserve note. Later on it says $1 is the value, but it's actually a United States Federal Reserve note.
A note is a promise to pay at a later date.
And it's to use for legal tender. It's just a commodity or a fiat currency.
Exactly right.
And that's
exactly what who was a former chairman of the Fed, Goldstein, something. Anyway, he called it counterfeit right on camera one day.
And it's debt-based money because each time it's made, a debt is created rather than asset-based money where if we would print our own money and pay for the materials, and that money just completely stays out into the public rather than taxes bringing that money back into the government and going to the IRS.
Well, first of all, a silver certificate or a gold certificate is not counterfeit.
Well, yeah.
That is a certain. You want to get away from the word note. You want to go to silver certificate or gold certificate. Okay,
well,
that means it's not counter. It's backed by something, some material asset. A note is backed by nothing but air, hot air.
But okay, it's my belief there's not enough gold to represent all the value in our current society, and then a fiat currency that's asset based, where our government gives out money to have things done for the people, and the money stays out there and keeps working and working and working, rather than debt-based money where we have someone print it for us and then we return that money to them later.
Yeah. Plus we pay them interest on it.
Yeah. Plus we pay
which
them
is
interest.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like
when we used to print our own money, gold and silver, in silver certificates, this nation didn't charge itself interest. So understand the con job when we went to the Federal Reserve System. It was a con for the banksters to make millions, billions at our expense. These people pay absolutely no tax on the interest of the Federal Reserve note. None.
The IRS pays no interest on the money that they get interest for?
No.
And where do they put that? And it's a conglomeration of about 10 different banking families.
Well, you got Gilderbergs and I forgot how many of them are. The Bank of London, the Bank, the Vatican Bank, Brussels, the Rockefellers. There's a whole bunch of them listed as part of members of the Federal Reserve.
All right. Well, thanks.
So those are the people who are majorly profiting from this scam that they're pulling on the American people.
So get back to your.
So let's go back here to number 8. It says, show me any law that requires me to respond to a non-government agency who are sending me threats, counterfeiting documents, making claim I owe them money, no lawful OMB numbers, no forms with the proper OMB approval. In other words, I'm telling Mr. Voinovich, you explain to me why these people are allowed to do this.
Why don't we do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just send out documents.
How would you like it if I wrote a bill on a note and a blank piece of paper, say you owe me $10,000, and I send it to you? Okay, that's what the IRS are doing.
If you send it back, hey, it worked.
So I mean, that's basically what they're doing. They're a non-government agency telling you that you owe them money. I mean,
for sure.
I don't respond to you too good. So why and how is this unlawful Department of Treasury using U.S. government printing presses to print their trash? It goes to misuse and appropriation of public funds. Since the IRS is not a lawfully established government agency, the U.S. Department of Justice has no lawful power of attorney, which they do in lawfully established government agencies, to represent them in a court of law. Nor can they accept anything lawfully from the IRS as to a criminal act against an American citizen. Understand that. This non-government agency is sharing information, your private personal information, financial information, without your consent to a government agency. You have a right not to testify against yourself in a court of law. The IRS is already supplying the testimony against you to the government agencies, when they themselves aren't even a government agency. So the U.S. Department of Justice is screwing you over in court.
So you're saying that the IRS gives your personal information to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice enforces you're paying taxes.
Yeah. And they're ignoring the rulings of the court, too. There are 60 rulings of the United States Supreme Court to benefit you and I over the government. And none of them show up in the IRS tax code. That is fraud and inducement because, ladies and gentlemen, they neglected to inform you in the IRS code. And I happen to have a copy of it here. And if you look under U.S. Supreme Court decisions in that tax code, there isn't one U.S. Supreme Court case in that code. Now, I'm going to go over a few of them in a little bit. Number 11. Why is there no lawful definition of non-taxpayer in the Internal Revenue Code? Income taxes being ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1895 would indicate such person does exist. Sir, I being one of them. In other words, the Supreme Court said income taxes are unconstitutional. The 1895 case has never been overturned.